By 1913, the Code of Ethics was adopted and consisted of 23 articles divided into two categories: duties to clients and duties to other brokers. This obligated association members who would not be known as realtors until 1916 to be absolutely honest, truthful, faithful and efficient, to obtain sole agency in writing, to respect the listings of his brother agent and to cooperate with him to sell, to advise an owner to renew a selling contract with some other agent rather than solicit the agency, to always speak kindly of competitors, to always be loyal, square, frank, and earnest in matters that require cooperation of other brokers, and finally, to advertise nothing but facts and to give honest opinion concerning a competitor's purchaser, even though such opinion may result in a sale by the competitor. Sound familiar? We wondered if the 1913 version of the Code of Ethics could be applied today. Phil, paint us a picture.
Consider a situation like this. Lois and Sally were best friends and worked together as a team until they had a falling out. Lois moved on to another firm and started advertising her services right away. Both sales associates intended to stay in the same market area they had shared together. Lois announced her new solo status in a huge marketing blitz. It was clear to anyone who read her advertisements that Lois was a top producer who could easily outsell the competition. Lois's approach did not sit well with Sally, so Sally began her own marketing campaign saying she was the #1 salesperson in the area. As the competition for business started to heat up, Lois decided to take the high road and keep things friendly. Sally, on the other hand, started to seethe over time and felt Lois's underhanded comments about the competition were directed at her. She decided to take her case to the court of public opinion, telling buyers and sellers that Lois was a lot of smoke and mirrors, who did a poor job of representing her clients, misleading sellers on the value of their property to get listings, and much more. Sally even went so far as to post comments about Lois's alleged business practices on her Facebook page. Since it was her personal account, she could avoid any accusations that she had violated the Code of Ethics and simply say what was on her mind. She was determined to give Lois a taste of her own medicine. Sally's tactics to discredit Lois worked. Lois noticed her business dropping off. Finally, a potential customer told her that she had heard about Lois's less than stellar reputation and was concerned about doing business with her. After investigating the matter, Lois discovered that the source of the disparaging remarks was her former business partner, Sally, and she had the facts to prove it. Lois filed an ethics complaint against Sally, citing Article 15, which says, "Realtors can only make truthful and objective statements about each other." If this were 1913, Lois could charge Sally with a violation of Article 3 under Duties to Brokers for not speaking kindly of competitors.
All right, so what happened to Sally?
Well, she was found in violation of Article 15, even though she was posting comments about Lois on her personal Facebook account. The fact is, Sally is still a realtor and must abide by the Code of Ethics. If this incident had occurred in 1913, the outcome would have been the same. Not bad for a document that is almost 100 years old.
Former National Association of Realtors Executive Vice President and General Counsel William D. North wrote, "The Code of Ethics of the National Association of Realtors represents one of those rare creations of man, a living document. A document which somehow preserves its significance, relevance, and usefulness despite the passing of years and the changing of the times." For most realtors, your first introduction to the code came during new member orientation. And most of you would probably admit it's hard to digest all that information at one time. It's the rare realtor who at moment's notice can connect the dots when it comes to how the code impacts their day-to-day business practices.
I had no idea when my sister wanted to buy a house near me that I had to disclose that we were related in writing to the property owner or the property owner's agent before she signed the contract to purchase. It's a good thing the listing agent realized I had just joined the realtor family. He told me about requirements under Article 4 instead of filing an ethics complaint against me. Live and learn. Read the code.
William D. North's statement that the Code of Ethics is a living document which preserves its significance, relevance, and usefulness despite the passing of years and the changing of times bears repeating. Why? Because today's Code of Ethics makes references to URLs, domain names, electronic displays, tweets, text messages, meta tags, keywords, and so much more. That terminology didn't exist when Mr. North wrote The Gift of Vision in 1978. So imagine how the Code of Ethics will read 20 years from now. It's imperative that all realtors stay current. If you don't, you may find yourselves face to face with an ethics tribunal. Unfortunately, many cases that go before the ethics tribunals are the result of realtors who fail to keep up to date with the Code of Ethics. So it's scary when you hear someone say,
The current copy of the Code of Ethics is 2005, right?
Let's take a moment to talk about the structure of the code. It starts with a preamble, just like the Constitution of the United States. The preamble to the U.S. Constitution is a brief introductory statement of the Constitution's fundamental purposes and guiding principles. It states in general terms, and courts have referred to it as reliable evidence of the Founding Fathers' intentions regarding the Constitution's meaning and what they hoped the Constitution would achieve. The preamble to the Code of Ethics does the exact same thing. It introduces the reader to the author's vision behind the code and what it should mean to those who call themselves realtors.
The code is divided into 3 sections: duties to clients and customers, duties to the public, and duties to realtors. There are 17 articles which are broad statements of ethical principles. Only violation of the articles may lead to disciplinary action. For example, Article 3 of the code says, Realtors shall cooperate with other brokers except when cooperation is not in the client's best interest. The obligation to cooperate does not obligate you to share commissions, fees, or to otherwise compensate another broker. The standards of practice that follow each article of the code support, interpret, and amplify the article itself. Standards of practices are the numbered paragraphs listed below each article. A realtor cannot be found in violation of a standard of practice. However, you can cite a standard of practice in a disciplinary proceeding to support the claim that a realtor has violated an article of the code. The standards of practice under Article 3 says the listing broker sets the terms and conditions for compensation, if any, and the cooperating broker should ascertain if there is an offer of compensation before starting to work a listing.
Here's a tip. Before you start to work a listing outside of your MLS's jurisdiction, contact the listing broker and confirm what your compensation will be. And always confirm your agreement in writing. Has this ever happened to you?
I started working on a listing, and the offer of compensation was X% in the MLS. I submitted my offer and found out the offer of compensation had changed. The listing broker changed the offer before my offer was submitted. I didn't think it was necessary to check the MLS on a daily basis. It doesn't matter anyway. I should be paid what was offered in the MLS at the time negotiations began. I think this is a violation of the Code of Ethics.
Time to test your knowledge. What do you think? Is this a possible violation of the Code of Ethics based on the face of the complaint? As long as the change is communicated prior to the offer being submitted, the listing broker has not violated the Code of Ethics. According to the Standard of Practice 3-2, any change in compensation offered for cooperative services must be communicated to the other realtor prior to the time the realtor submits an offer to purchase or lease the property. However, if the listing broker changes the offer of compensation after you submit your offer, the listing broker could be in violation of Article 3 as supported by Standard of Practice 3-2.
Here's a tip. Always print out the listing with the compensation when you submit your offer. The date timestamp will help to support your claim that the offer of compensation was X% when you submitted the offer to the listing firm.
As you can see, the standards of practice help to further define the articles of the code by spelling out what conduct is or is not unethical. But remember, you cannot be found in violation of the standard of practice. A complaint could read, "The complainant realtor, Joan, charges an alleged violation of Article 3, citing Standard of Practice 3-2 of the Code of Ethics." In addition to citing a standard of practice, a complainant or the hearing panel could cite a case interpretation, which is the realtor organization's version of case law. According to Statement of Policy Number 57 in the Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual, case interpretations are official policy which illustrate and explain the principles articulated in the Articles and Standards of Practice. As is the case with a standard of practice, a case interpretation can be cited by complainants in support of alleged violations of the articles and by hearing panels in decisions that an article or articles have been violated. Here is a sample of a case interpretation in action.
Realtor Lauren was a non-principal broker licensed with Rose Hill Realtors. She specialized in buyer representation. A prominent feature on her website carried the headline,
"I sold these and I can help you buy or sell too."
Under the headline was a list of more than 100 street addresses of properties for which Lauren had found buyers. For personal and professional reasons, Realtor Lauren chose to leave Rose Hill to affiliate with Green Realtors. As she transitioned to her new firm, Lauren was careful to disclose the name of her new firm in a readily apparent manner on her website. Her website also continued to display the list of properties she had found buyers for during her time with the Rose Hill firm. Lauren's parting with Rose Hill had been amicable, so she was surprised to receive a complaint brought by her former principal broker, Steve. Steve alleged a violation of Article 12, as interpreted by Standard of Practice 12-7. He cited Lauren's website's display of sales made while Lauren had been affiliated with Rose Hill. At the hearing, Realtor Steve, the complainant, noted the Standard of Practice 12-7 provides in part,
only realtors who participated in the transaction as the listing broker or cooperating broker may claim to have sold the property. Rose Hill Realtors was the selling broker in these transactions, not our former sales associate, Lauren. Lauren's advertising our sales under the umbrella of her new firm, Green Realtors, is confusing at best, and is potentially misleading to consumers who may get the impression that Green Realtors was involved in these transactions when that's not the case.
Realtor Lauren defended herself and her website, arguing the fact that she had found the buyers for each of the properties listed on her website was still true, and that the only thing that had changed was her firm affiliation.
If it was true when I was licensed with Rose Hill, then it's still true even though I'm now licensed with Green Realtors.
The hearing panel agreed that Realtor Lauren had, in fact, sold the properties, albeit while licensed with Rose Hill. The ad, however, suggested that the sales were made while Lauren was licensed with Green Realtors, which was not the case. Consequently, Lauren was found in violation of Article 12.
Here's a tip. Case interpretations are perfect for sales meeting discussions. Simply read the story until you get to the hearing panel's decision. Get a group discussion going. Then share the panel's determination.
Let's quickly summarize what we've learned about the structure of the Code of Ethics. After the all-important preamble, which sets the tone for the entire document, the Code of Ethics is divided into 3 sections: duties to clients and customers, duties to the public, and duties to realtors. A member can only be found in violation of an article of the Code of Ethics. However, standards of practice support, interpret, and amplify the article itself. The case interpretations illustrate and explain the articles and standards of practice. The Code of Ethics, standards of practice, and case interpretations are consistently reviewed and analyzed. They are revised when necessary. Amendments are made during the NAR mid-year meetings and the Realtors Conference and Expo. But before amendments become effective, the NAR Professional Standards Committee and the NAR Board of Directors must approve them. Many of these changes result from recommendations by the Interpretations and Procedures Subcommittee of the Professional Standards Committee. Any change to an article of the code must be approved by the NAR delegate body and doesn't go into effect until January 1st of the coming year.
Here's another tip. Make it a New Year's resolution to print a copy of the code on January 1st each year. Think of it as another form of errors and omissions insurance.
Always remember that where the code conflicts with the duties of law, the law always takes precedence. At the same time, the code does, in most instances, impose a higher standard than that of the law. The code often restates certain fundamental legal principles, such as those found in contract, agency, and fair housing laws. If you're ready, let's test your knowledge of what you learned in Chapter 3. What year was the Code of Ethics first adopted by the National Association of Realtors? The answer is 1913. True or false? The term Realtor was first introduced when the first version of the Code of Ethics was adopted. False. The term Realtor was adopted in 1916, 3 years after the Code of Ethics was first adopted. Question 3. A standards of practice follows each article of the code to support, interpret, and amplify the article itself. A member can be found in violation of a standard of practice. True or false? The answer is false. A standard of practice can be cited in the complaint or in the hearing panel's findings of fact, but the member can only be found in violation of the article.
True or false? Case interpretations are official policy, which illustrate and explain the principles articulated in the articles and standards of practice. Case interpretations are specific situations or fact scenarios involving charges of alleged unethical conduct, which are reviewed by a peer panel of board members. Each case provides a hearing panel's decision based on facts and the rationale for the decision. A case interpretation can be cited in a complaint or decision of a hearing panel, but the member cannot be found in violation of a case interpretation. The answer is true. A case interpretation can be cited in the complaint or hearing panel's findings of fact the same way a standard of practice is cited. Question 5. Where the Code of Ethics conflicts with state law, the Code of Ethics supersedes the law since it is a nationally based code of professional conduct. True or false? The answer is false. If the conduct in the Code of Ethics conflicts with state law, the law always supersedes the Code of Ethics. Here's our last question for Chapter 3. How often should you check to see if the Code of Ethics has been amended? The answer is any changes that were adopted by the National Association of Realtors go into effect on January 1st of each year. So you should check once a year.